Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Leadership Boy podcast. I'm Enrique, Vince, my co-host, and we're celebrating the Navy birthday. Hoo-yah, Navy, happy birthday. But we have a special guest to commemorate that and be with us and share his time in the Navy. Hey, Vince, you'll introduce.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're so excited. 246 years, the Navy was the inception of it. And we have Fleet Master Chief Paul Kingsbury from Carlinton, Virginia, here with us today. Honored to have you, sir. Thank you, Fleet Master Chief, for being on. Please, let's just start off and talk about you and your evolution in the United States Navy.
All right, guys. Well, first of all, happy birthday. Thanks for the invite and the opportunity to join you in this digital space of influence. So this is great stuff. I love seeing what you guys are doing and the opportunity to join you. So basically my journey in the United States Navy started back in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That's where I grew up. I was born and raised, and I enlisted in the Navy in 1987. I had gone to St. Thomas Aquinas High School. Great opportunity, did pretty good in school, but didn't have much coaching and mentoring on kind of what to do. So those flyers started coming in, and I saw them come in for the Air Force and the Navy, and my parents started nudging me like, hey, why don't you check that out? I know I didn't want to go Marine Corps. I didn't want to go Army. So those two drew me in. Then I selected Navy, took the ASVAB, and then eventually took the qualifying exam and got in the Navy Nuclear Propulsion Program, or as a Navy nuke, as we would call them. So I went to school the first, year and a half, did the nuke thing, and then went on this journey. So a lot of had the opportunity to go submarines. I'm like, nah, not so much for me. I'd rather see daylight. So I chose to go surface nuke. So I did several tours as a nuke on aircraft carriers, one on the USS Mississippi back when we used to have nuke cruisers. And then, as you know, there's a lot of great things that come out of nuke power, but Enrique, as you know, you talk to nukes, right? That's a tough world. So I kind of just knew I wasn't fully satisfied. I like training and educating side of it. I did an instructor tour, but I just wasn't fully satisfied with technical management. I just couldn't see myself doing aircraft carrier to prototype or going LDO. So I had some good senior chiefs and master chiefs that were kind of coaching me along, and saw some talent that I didn't even see. And frankly, some commanding officers that said, hey, you're going to be a command master chief one day. So I shifted, got excited, watched some other folks, one in particular, Glenn Mallow, who was a fellow nuke of mine, and he ended up getting picked up a few years ahead of me. So I ended up going to the command master chief program. And I was an East Coast sailor my whole life, right? Norfolk, Virginia. And next thing I knew, I thought I was going to go to Florida, right? Like, all right, now I can go down to Florida, get back home. My first orders were to Japan. So I ended up going to Sasebo, Japan on an LPD, forward deployed, great experience, learned a lot about that conventional side of the Navy, got to see a lot, sail a lot, and learn about Westpac sailor life. And then, came back, did a tour at VFA 211. So did a squadron, and then ended up going way back to the West Pacific again as a Region Master Chief in Guam. And then followed up 2 years later to be the Region Master Chief for Naval Forces Japan. Then came back, did a couple of years at the Naval Safety Center. So was able to leverage my risk management background in nuclear power and help them with their safety management system development, and hopefully raising awareness within at least the MCPON's leadership mess with, hey, here's safety's more than just glow belts and PPE and all that kind of stuff, right? And then ultimately got selected to be the Fleet Master Chief for U.S. Fleet Forces Command, and then ended up retiring in 2019. 1 January was the official date. I had retired a little bit. I did my ceremony in September. I was fortunate enough to be able to join the U.S. Naval Institute team. And I'll talk a little bit about my journey into writing and using that tool of influence and stuff like that. But, and now I'm just working on, as you guys do, right, working on Cutlass Leadership brand and getting into that world of consulting and, organizational leadership. So that was my journey.
And a wonderful journey. And I was fortunate enough, Fleet, to witness a lot of that time.
Yep.
I'm so happy you got the West Coast under your belt, because that's where my heart is. Although I was able to serve on both coasts, Virginia as well on the USS Iwo Jima. But there's been a lot of changes undoubtedly since your Fort Lauderdale days to your Japan days, to your Fleet Force days. So what changes have you seen in the Navy throughout?
Yeah. So I think the first one, right, and you know that, Enrique, you'll appreciate this, and so will Vince, right, on the Air Force side. So the first thing I think you saw, we think most of us enlisted around the same time. So I came into a Cold War Navy. So that's the first big change, right? It was a huge Navy, 600 ships. And I think this is cool to get into it, recognizing that it's the Navy's birthday, right? So, and you join the Navy, you're a young sailor today, or even your modern chief's mess or senior enlisted in the Air Force. They just know the Air Force they know today. They don't understand, like, hey, let's come out of World War II, and you had thousands of ships, right? And the nature of warfare drives the size of the force. So I was in a Navy that was Cold War postured, 15 aircraft carriers, over 100 submarines, 600 ship Navy coming out of the Ronald Reagan, or in the Ronald Reagan era. And it was pretty cool, right? Because we actually did med cruises back then, because the theater of concern was 6th Fleet, right? Not 5th Fleet at the time. So my first deployment was as a med sailor, a lot of ports, a lot more port time than underway time. I had to save money to just, do all the liberty I could, and trading off duty days and paying off and making money that way. And then the first shift was, I was on my, the end of that first deployment on the Eisenhower. And that's when Iraq invaded Kuwait. And, we were the first carrier that took station in the Red Sea. And for me as a sailor, that was a big deal. The first time you see a flight deck loaded, with all the aircraft ready with bombs, they just need to pull pins and you're in it, right? That just kind of makes it all real for you. We only spent a couple of weeks there, and then the USS Roosevelt came and relieved us. And then we went in the yards and the whole thing lit off. And then we came back and did a cruise afterwards, and that was 5th Fleet. And that was the first shift, right? Where we started to shift from this Cold War thing. And then obviously in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. So our strategic footprint was shaped more towards 5th Fleet AOR as far as the Navy. And we started to downsize, right? And then, as you know, over the journey, 9/11 happens. So then we go all into Afghanistan. And we're really in there, but we shift to more power projection on the Navy side, right? So now aircraft carriers are going in and just enforcing, or supporting ground forces, frankly, Army, Marines, and others. So that's the big thing. And then we did that obviously for the last 20 plus years. The recent withdrawal from Afghanistan kind of, I think, puts a period on the end of that period. But towards the end of my career, you started to see the shift towards, now I've got the rise of peer competition again. You hear that out in the space. So that's the one big shift, is in the strategic landscape of what's happening and how we're, those 4 stars up there making decisions. I think they're making the best ones they can with things in mind, and with their funding limitations, right? In many cases, they'd like to have a whole lot more. They just don't have the money to do it. But I know smart people across the spectrum of DIME, right, of national military power, are thinking about this. What does a rising China mean? What does relationships with Russia mean now? They're all developing capability. So it's not just the strategic landscape. The technology of warfare is changing too. So a lot of unmanned stuff, hypersonics, new yields with nuclear weapons, right? So it's kind of, I won't say scary, but it's getting intense there, right? So I see us going back to that kind of post-world deterrence-based military thing. So that was one big change. The other one I saw was social changes. So not just, so little things like, I think when you guys came in, one big change, hazing was like, oh, right, that was a part of life. Like when I went through nuke power school and my first time in the ship, it was like, number one, there weren't any women on ships, right? So there was a cultural difference there. Number two, I mean, they just, like, it was a culture that was there of hazing and kind of doing those kind of things. That changed, right? We started open combat positions to women. Socially, we started to, I think we had policies, that in the 1970s that they're aimed at, eliminating racism and, giving equal opportunity events. That's the world you grew in. I think obviously recently one thing has been like, hey, let's pause and look and see if those things are as good as we think they are, and adjust as we need to. So more diversity and inclusion. But I think culturally you've seen that. I think we've invested more. I've seen in the enlisted force, we've invested more into leadership and management education. not as much as we want to. Definitely, I think the Air Force leads us there. They have great, like I went to the Air Force Senior Enlisted Academy. You guys heavily invest in, community college of the Air Force and things like that. Navy is starting to get there. They've recently stood up their community college for the Navy. But I think culturally, those are a lot of things I saw too over time, right? And then women on ships and those kind of things. So, and then the other change I would think I saw is this generational turnover. So when I came in, it was a Navy led by really boomers, right? And each generation, you got to understand, leads in a different way. They value different things. Right now, you got a Navy that's led. Really, the top leadership positions should be right now filled by Gen X types like me, you guys. And then most of the military is millennial, right? We think millennials are new, but they're not. They're most of the military at this point. And then you're bringing in Gen Z or the Centennial group now. So there's a big, how they, what they demand out of their leadership is different too, right? How they want to be communicated, what they want to be able to do. I've watched that change, right? The Navy chiefs mess I grew up in under boomers that were just position based and like just shut up and do it. That's not the nature, right? I didn't lead that way. I was more of a, well, we just don't do things. I just don't tell you to do things. I want to explain it. I want you to understand. I want to get things done. I just don't want to sit in an office and hold a position. And then now with Centennials, they want definitely, yeah. And you saw leadership styles with, as they came in, they brought technology. So having to reconcile how to use tools like this and social media and helping manage and learn to lead with those tools as well has changed. But now with Centennials, in many cases, that fourth generation goes back. So some say that they will become the new greatest generation. And it might all align that way, right? With this kind of rising potential conflict with a high-end peer. This will be World War II kind of level stuff, national security, national survival kind of level. If you go to it, hopefully we don't. Hopefully deterrence always works. But they will be challenged in a way that we never were on active duty, right? And the country hasn't been in a while. So those are the changes that I'd seen over my 31 years.
Those are fantastic changes. Talk about strategic landscape, the cultural changes, social in the social arena, having women on ship, downsizing, the generational. To your point, they are very influential, dealing with the technology, dealing with what's going to happen in the future. So that's my leading question: is what do you see? What are your thoughts, Fleet, regarding the future of the Navy?
So it's definitely going to be. So I'll make a. I just want to comment on that point. So one of the attributes of Centennials, right? These are the new sailors and airmen, and frankly, service members recruiting. Number one, they want authentic leaders, right? So they're more apt to connect with their peer group leaders than they are with kind of the senior enlisted leader kind of people, right? Not that you can't, but that's one thing. But they're in this digital space, and they want to lead and be involved. So I think that's one aspect of this. But looking forward, so I think a lot of it is going to be, it's going to be interesting. I think the technology is going to drive a lot of this. I think we'll continue to, I don't know if there's much anymore. I'm sure we can figure it out, but I think the cultural space has been covered. I think you just, as far as diversity and inclusion, right? So I think if you go to any specific consideration, whether it's race, gender, color, creed, sexual orientation, I think we've gotten the policies in place, right, that kind of create opportunity, right? I'm a fan of equal opportunity, not equal outcome, right? So it doesn't mean that and I'll talk about, that's one of the things the Navy provided me, was this great opportunity, but not everyone takes advantage of all the opportunities that are there. So I think culturally, you just got to, when I look forward, I would think you've got a force or leadership that should just make sure I've got things in place to continually make sure those things are valued, right? And that they don't erode away, and we've got there. But we'll see what could happen. I think communication wise, I think we'll continue to shift to, hopefully, I know the Navy was trying to get into, customer service based stuff on using technology. So if I go on my Navy Federal app, I can do all my stuff there. I think there's a vision where you would get to where you could do all your PCS moves and all your personal finance and all that kind of human resource stuff on an app. I know that Navy's gone to My Navy HR, and they've started to consolidate, right? So that's one movement that way. But I think there are definitely concerns with risk with personal information in cyberspace and things like that that limit how quickly we go there. But I think we're going to continue to evolve in that direction. And then the other thing you're going to see is as you move into more unmanned, that will have impacts on force structure and who does what going forward, right? So if I shift to unmanned, I think I just saw an article like seventh generation, I think it's 6th or 7th generation aircraft coming out. It'll have the capability to be manned or unmanned, right? So we're starting to go that way. As you know, like if you cannot start to unmanned stuff, you replace people with technology. That can be good, but that can also be bad. So those are the areas where I think that you can see in the future, and it's kind of already getting there. Ideally, I hope the future of the Navy involves some more resourcing, although it's been challenged, right? We need more resourcing. We need more people to man ships. They're undermanned. You need more ships, period. And you need capability that's right for that fight. So I think that's what you can look out and see. And if you read, read Proceedings Magazine or any of the current military news, you'll see that those are the areas people are thinking about.
Yeah, a very, a future that is open for a lot of things. Technology definitely is going to be the leading edge of that, and how you use technology and all of that will make a difference. So great points there, Fleet. Now, this week we celebrate, and today we celebrate the Navy's 246th birthday, but also at the same time, which is something different from what you and I experienced, the Chief Select list came out October 5th.
Yes.
They're just 1 week young, right?
Yes.
And so they're going through their process. There's a lot of sailors, a lot of servicemen and women that are listening to this podcast. What pearls of wisdom would you be able to share with everyone at large, but also some for the Chief Selects that are listening?
All right. So first of all, congratulations to all the new Chief Selects, right? Yeah, COVID got them really off schedule. Normally September 16th, right? Results would come out in early to mid-August, and then we would culminate with a pinning ceremony on September 16th. So congratulations. I put some posts out, right? Selfless plug, but I'll cover these, right? My pearls of wisdom are in the Chief Petty Officer's Guide. That's the book that I had the opportunity to write for the U.S. Naval Institute. So it's a 200+ page charge book. But I would offer a couple things here when I talk about general leadership advice, right? Whether it's a new chief, I don't care if you're an E1 or an E9, right? These things kind of apply. So I think sometimes there's a mindset of like, hey, I'm a mass chief, whatever. But my experience has been, I think you guys know this too, right? Throughout my career, I was in continually new positions, right? So I would get in a position, I would gain some competence in it. My character was developing. And then if I did well, right, they gave me the opportunity, I had to deliver. And then people saw potential in me. They wrote evals on me. They put me in new positions of influence and management, wrote evals, right? And all that eventually happened. But I was continually in new opportunities. So I was growing into a new role kind of all the time. And sometimes I was growing into multiple roles. So I was a new first class petty officer, and then I was qualified as a watch supervisor. So those are two leadership opportunities that you can qualify and you can get in that position, and you can use what you've learned up to that date, but those new responsibilities and the way, and frankly, in a new position, the new people you're going to target, right? And your bosses change, their scope of influence changes, the people directly below you that you influence changes, and your peer group changes. So the one thing I would say is, it sounds cliche, but this concept of always growing matters. So even as you know, Enrique, right, and Vince too, right, we were senior enlisted leaders, but then we went in these command positions. You can't tell me you don't grow in that, right? So as a nuke mass chief, I made mass chief in 15 years, right? I was command mass chief at 16. So I was still maturing as a mass chief. And I went in as command mass chief. So if you think you've got it, right, you don't have it. Even when I went into my role as fleet mass chief, I had to grow into that role. It was completely different, the nature of working on a 4-star staff. So if you shut your mindset down to like, oh, I've got this, you're just setting yourself up for lack of growth. So that's the first thing to a new sailor or a new chief select, right? Okay, got it. you're going to get 6 to 8 weeks here of initiation time. We're going to integrate you into the Chiefs mess. That's really what it's about, right? Integrating you into a new peer group. But you're going to grow into this new role over the next year, and you're going to learn. And then when you make senior chief, you're going to grow in that role. So that's one thing I would encourage them. Look at each opportunity, each qualification, each new job position as an opportunity to grow and use your resources that are there. And with those come, like, just as a new sailor, right? I used to say, just like, hey, as a new sailor, keep your eyes and ears open, your mouth shut. I've kind of changed that now, right? It's like, I want your eyes and ears open. But I want you asking questions and learning, right? That's the same thing for anything. When I went on a fleet staff as fleet master chief, I mean, I felt confident in what I wanted to kind of get in and influence, but I had to watch, right? I was in new governance structures. There were new people. There's SESs I'm dealing with. So I did spend a lot of time with my eyes open, my ears open, and a lot more listening than a lot more talking, even when I was engaging the fleet, right? And sensing. So that helped me orient where I could best use my influence and my position on that staff. So again, that's one that we tell new sailors, but it applies to all of us. Eyes and ears open, listen more than you're talking when you first get into those positions of leadership. And then other stuff, be where you need to be and when you need to be, when you need to be there, right? I think sometimes you see as you get more senior, right? We were definitely on time where we should have been when we were younger. And then I just tend to see, like, you get up in these higher levels of the organization and people are 5 minutes late, they're strolling the meetings late. And I'm like, nope, that's not how that should work, right? That's shows me a breakdown of self-discipline, but be where you need to be when you need to be. People are watching that stuff, and it's disrespect to the people who are leading those meetings when you're not that. One big thing I think you guys can attest to, it was my experience, definitely in Nuke Power, that qualifications are your reputation, right? So how fast I qualify and how much I know when I qualify, that's the foundation of your competence, right? And your character. And one thing I talk about when I discuss my leadership philosophy is, one of the key things is 8 power bases. I can give you position power. You can lead and tell things to do with the authorities inherent in that position all day. But if you really want to generate buy-in and start to elevate the team, you got to show them you have competence and character, which give you credibility, and that credibility gives trust. And now you can lead from an authentic place, right? And you start to unleash the real talent in your team. So that starts with how fast you qualify and what you know about your stuff, right? And then how you treat people. So as you're growing as a leader, golden rule, right? Just try to treat people the way you would want to be treated. I think we take on a positional mindset of, oh, I'm now a this or a that, or I'm a chief, or I'm a command level, and I have to play a role. It's like, no, you're not here to play a role. Just be your authentic self and just understand how you wield your influence and who you wield with changes. But I had to learn that as a new chief. I wanted to change and be something that wasn't right, that I thought, like, oh, now I have to lead in a more pressure-based, coercive way, right? Bulkhead leadership kind of crap. No, I kind of adjusted. I saw my team not physically move away, but I could sense emotional intelligence kicked in. I'm like, I'm not getting the same results. I'm not feeling good about my leadership style. So once I got to be an authentic Paul and leading in the way that I knew was comfortable for me, things were good. So people need to continue to be authentic and don't try to grow into a position based on a role you think you should be playing. Just be your authentic self. And then finally, throughout my career, routines and self-discipline matter, right? So structure matters, right? And I know in some organizations in the civilian side where you want more innovation and collaboration, right? There's, you can roll off some of that structure, but I guaranteed every organization, you see this too, right? I know if I go into any organization, there is some level of structure and discipline, right? That's in there, what we would call good order and discipline, right? How communication flows is structured, how you talk with other people, how you do your processes and get to the end solution. So even brainstorming sessions are a sort of structure, right? So they just unleash creativity. So I would encourage people, that's my last, continue to be authentic, have routines, but just be the authentic leader you are. Don't try to be something you're not.
That's a compact way of putting 31 years of prose of wisdom in these last 5 minutes, but very influential for any E1 to E9. So
Yep.
everything you shared, Fleet, is amazing, and really for the growth, for the continual of care of others, taking care of others, open eyes, open ears, because
Yeah.
listening more is very important. All those are great pearls of wisdoms. So thank you for sharing. Now, for the future generations of sailors coming up, what tips or advice would you offer those upcoming sailors?
So the big thing I'll talk about, so the things I just covered all matter, right? So if you're an E1 coming right in the door, all those kind of things. Like I said, it used to be eyes and ears open, mouth shut. I'll tell you when it's time to speak. I think we encourage a lot more asking questions and listening. And I think like I said, most of the military now is millennial. I think those leaders grew up with that. We would call it asking why, right? So the boomer generation was all about like, just do it because I said so. Don't ask me why. As a Gen Xer, I was a fan of asking why, right? I wanted to understand why because I knew what that was from. And frankly, my nuclear power background, and one of the attributes was a questioning attitude. So I was always a fan of I'm not just going to, there's a difference in how you ask why too, right? It shouldn't just be, well, why do you want me to do that? Right? It's like, hey, chief, connect me to the end state, right? What? Because people want to know what they're doing matters, right? So that's what the why is all about, right? So again, so all the things that I just talked about, I think matter to the E1. The other thing I'll offer for them is like this concept of opportunity. So there are so many opportunities. And the way I used to package it during career development boards is you come in the Navy, I open a door and you come into a big room. And then there's people in that room that expect you to do some things to a certain level of standard. We're teaching and coaching you in that room too, right? So it's not just, you're not being guided, you are. And then on the other end of that room, there's some doors, right? And as you do certain things, those doors start to open, right? Right? And some lead to your next pay grade, some lead to a commissioning opportunity, some lead to a civilian opportunity, right? But if you start to goof off in that room and you don't do, right, either those doors don't open or they quickly start to shut, right? And then the only one you got left is the one you came in, right? And you got to go back out. So you listen to the people that are in that room with you, right? And take their advice, right? They are there to help. Most of them are, they should be, right? And that's what I want for new chiefs, right? Let's get it right. This just isn't about like, I'm a chief playing a role and like tough guy or gal leadership and anchor up. I got it. You're in that room helping them open those doors, right? So that should be what it's about. And identifying, not everyone gets into every door again, right? Some doors have, it takes a lot to get that door open and you got to show a lot to get that door open, right? We don't just open the door into the command master sheet program to everyone, right? So again, but if you listen to the people, if you have good mentors, they will help you figure out how to unlock those doors of opportunity. And then you just got to take them, right? There were several doors in my career that they're starting to open and I just didn't, like I said, LDO warrant could have been one. I was getting nudged. I started putting a package together for that. And then I just got encouraged. People were saying, no, that door, your door is probably command master chief is where you would be, where you would win and the Navy would win, right? So some people are going to tell you and help you guide on those doors, but take advantage of all those benefits that are out there, right? Navy college, right? I know there's some requirements of what you got to do. Hey, I'm telling you, you go in the civilian world, there's not much of that going on. Not many jobs are going to say, hey, by the way, on your own time, we're going to pay to get you certain, a certain amount of semester hours and we're going to pay for it. So you take what you can get, you take advantage of that stuff, work your hardest. And I don't care if you do 6 years or 30, you just need to lead with recognition that you were the 1% that served. And I'm not saying that in an elitist way. But a lot of people don't even qualify to come in the doors of into that first door. So it's a rare opportunity. There's other people that would die to be in that door with you that won't ever have the opportunity. Same advice to the new chiefs, right? I got it. You were selected, but just realize I could go down that selection list of people that weren't advanced behind you 10 or 20 deep. And I guarantee there's men and women that'll do your job as a chief and they would die to have your position. So you owe it to them to do it right. And in many cases, they could probably do it better than you do and outperform you. So that's my advice for that new sailor or airman coming in.
Yeah, well, I tell you, that great advice, and as you were laying the ground of a CDB. It threw me back
Yes.
to to my career counseling days, which I spent 15 years doing. It's really and truly the opportunity to help a sailor get where they
Yeah.
need to be. And so, yes, I agree. For those new chiefs, that's your opportunity to show why you were selected, not
Yep.
not to throw that anchor around, right? So,
Yeah. And then I'll just wrote one point. So, the Naval Institute had, right before I retired, I wrote, help them update to the second edition of the Chief Petty Officer's Guide. I tried to, again, put a lot of this advice in there, same thing. Because we talk a good game in the Chiefs Mess, but no one had really put it into writing. So I tried to do that. And then the Petty Officer's Guide, I just saw a natural progression that a lot of that direct level leadership and things we've talked about today. So that Petty Officer Guide, I got a Petty Officer, Dan Richard. He's now out of the Navy. He's my co-author, but that comes out in the spring of next year from the U.S. Naval Institute. So I'm excited about that. A lot of great direct level leadership advice. And then I expect that I'm going to go back and write the third edition. I'm going to elevate the game of the Chief Petty Officer's Guide, take it. It's not just for new chiefs. It's going to be for senior chiefs and master chiefs, like I said, growing into those new roles.
Yeah, well, I tell you, you have the background and expertise to do that. I'm so happy that you did take the time to write that book, and now the book that's about to come up, we're sure to be asking you to get a copy of that and
Yes.
collaborate with you and make sure that gets promoted. But it's important not only to get yourself educated, but to see yourself actually execute what you're reading. So for all those listening out there on the leadership side, it's great to read and all of that, but make sure you're executing and getting that stuff done, because that's what your people are expecting from you. Well, Paul Fleet, I tell you, it's been a pleasure to have you on here today. I was conversing with with Vince in the back. I love this, all the stuff that you're sharing. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people that are wondering, man, who's this Paul guy? Us in the fleet, we know. The Air Force kind of knows now, but they're wondering, man, how could I get him? I know you do some consulting. I know you do some training, organizational stuff. How could they get a hold of you?
So the easiest one is hit me up at cutlassleadership@gmail.com. You can check out the website, right? cutlassleadership.com. And then also, if you want to, I don't know if you're going to have an episode description, we can put that, or they can hit me on my personal email, which is paulie8m@gmail.com as well. So.
Oh, definitely. Folks, we are here honored with Fleet Paul Kingsbury on the 246th birthday of the Navy. So I just want to put that out there. That's a long time. You guys look very young for that age.
Yes.
And we're just honored also to be able to have a great sponsor doing this show, sponsoring our show, which is Round Point Mortgage Service Corporation. So thank you for them for sponsoring this show. Folks, our YouTube channel is our book. So hit subscribe, and you enter into a drawing to win a book, which is from Scott McGregor, Standing Your O, Salute Edition. It is lessons in leadership and in gratitude. And we do radio check. We do a buddy check twice a month, 1st and the 15th, like a payday in the military, 1900, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for just checking in our brothers and sisters, not only in the military, but in our first responder community. So it's LinkedIn Live. Check this out. And lastly, next week, we have another great guest. They have a great product in the market out there. You're going to love to hear what's going on with that individual. But today, 246 years, Fleet, we thank you for being here, honoring the United States Navy.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time, and good luck to you guys.